2009 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
It was 1999 when Honda introduced the Insight hybrid vehicle, the first gasoline-electric sold in North America. From a design point of view, it was a love-hate relationship. For me, I loved the look. I felt that if you're going to have an economy car and you want to attract young people, you've got to be a little funky. And I predicted the Insight would be a big success. Boy, was I wrong. Hard to believe, I know. But the big problem was simply a lack of room for anything but two people. So the Insight drove off into the sunset. Now Honda still had the Civic Hybrid, but along came the Toyota Prius, also kind of quirky looking, but relatively speaking, a big success among those trying to save the planet. So Honda thought, maybe we should bring back the Insight. So it went back to the drawing board, and this week we're going to check out the new and Honda hopes the improved 2010 Insight.
We had a lot of homework to do after the first one. The first Insight was designed with a purpose in mind to be very fuel efficient. It was almost a single purpose because it was a two-seat vehicle, so the practicality of it was limited. So we've done our homework. We decided we need to expand sales in the hybrid lineup, and we came out with a 5-passenger vehicle, which I think you'll agree is a very functional hatchback. It can offer a lot to Canadians and what they need.
Well, it's a bit of a mystery to me that they didn't get something out earlier than this, because a lot of the success of the Prius has been the fact that it's a dedicated body style, and people say, oh, there's a hybrid, and they see a Civic or an Accord or a Camry or something like that, and they don't recognize it as a hybrid. Now, I guess it depends whether you really want to be recognized as a hybrid driver. Probably most people do, I would say.
Well, the hybrid system is very similar to an existing system in our Civic hybrid, but we have made enhancements to it and improvements. The batteries have been reduced in size by 28%, so they're more compact, lighter. The engine is much smaller and lighter, and the IMA system within the engine is lighter as well. So basically, you would start off from a stop using the gas engine, and then as you get up to cruising speed, the gas engine would be reduced in its requirement, and the electric motor would take over. In optimal conditions, it can run alone on the electric motor.
Okay, let's be honest. When it came to design, the very first Insight stood alone. But this second one, yes, it's more practical, but am I the only one that sees, well, a little bit of the competition in it?
It looks too much like a Prius. And I just said to one of the executives earlier on today that why didn't they take it one step bigger and really make a difference to the Prius competitor, you know?
It's not by intention, but obviously the design is an optimal shape to reduce the drag on the vehicle. So I would agree it does tend to look like one, but we feel it is unique.
Speaking for myself, four-cylinder gasoline technology has come such a long way in terms of its fuel efficiency that there's no longer that great a difference between a hybrid and a very well done four-cylinder gasoline engine, which both Honda and Toyota, of course, are the masters at.
And you know, I have to agree with Wade. As much as I enjoy driving the Insight and all it stands for, our long-term vehicle and our overall car of the year is the Honda Fit. It's just as fuel efficient and it looks great. So the question is, why does Honda need a hybrid?
It's hard to say. I believe that deep down inside, Honda is very committed to their stance on the environment. I think it's not just talk coming from Honda. It is something that they definitely believe in, and that, frankly, I think they just enjoy applying the science that the company is capable of to producing vehicles such as this.
You know, inside the Insight, it's fairly comfortable, very little road noise, but when you hit the gas, well, you can hear that. It's kind of irritating. Of course, you got that CVT transmission, which is good reason not to spike the gas and save fuel. And speaking of saving fuel, you can even watch how you're doing by looking at the speedometer. The color goes from green to blue, with green being the maximum fuel economy. And you get a bit of a reward, a total of 5 leaves if you're doing real well.
It's going to be really fun to watch over the next year, the battle, because we've got two cars that are head-to-head here. There may be a few dollars different in prices, but it's going to be very interesting. Will the new Honda buyers come from the Prius, people who used to buy a Prius, or will there be a completely new batch of people and we'll see more hybrids on the roads than ever before?
There's many, many unique aspects to this vehicle, and people will be able to differentiate from the Prius. Of course, we're hoping that people will come to the Honda because of our reputation.
What would I buy? Prius. I think I'd buy a Prius. And yet, I don't know. I've driven a Prius a lot, and maybe after I've driven the Honda more, I'd like it better.
We think we're going to make some noise with this vehicle, and we feel that we're going to appeal to a broader range of customer. Again, we feel we can be aggressive with the pricing, and we can bring some customers into the hybrid family that typically haven't been able to afford it in the past.
Did we finally get some straight talk from a car maker about fuel efficiency? More later on Kenzie's Corner.
It may be a little dark and dank, but it matters not a whit. On this edition of Test Drive, the all-new Camaro. Since its showing as a concept, the Camaro has wowed onlookers. A week with the road-going version proved that nothing has changed. Something as simple as getting gas was a protracted venture because of the interest. More surprising was that the obvious lust in the eye of the beholder transcended the age barrier. Young and old gravitated to this car in equal numbers. You know, this Camaro reminds me of Jackie Gleason. Now, he was a very large man, but he was also very light on his feet. That describes the Camaro to a T. When you drive this thing with enthusiasm, it really does feel light and alive. It just goes to show you should never judge a book by its cover. Push the Camaro through the pylons and the fully independent suspension hunkers down. There is virtually no body roll, and the back end only goes walkabout when the driver pours on the coals a little too early. When this does happen, the electronic nanny reels things in and puts the driver back on track. The rest of the Camaro's dynamic presence impressed me mightily. First, the steering feel and feedback is superb. Second, the ride quality is first rate, and this despite the oversized 245/45 R20 front and 275/40 R20 rear wheel and tyre package, and the additional unsprung mass it adds. The brakes are also up to the task. The pedal is easily modulated, which keeps the anti-lock system at bay, and the large discs deliver 41-metre stops from 100k. The interior of this Camaro is very mechanical in nature. Everything is oversized and it's right there in your face. It doesn't matter because it fits in very nicely with the rest of the theme. There are, however, two nits to pick. First of all, well, some of the plastics didn't come off the top shelf. The second one has to do with this transmission. Now, whilst you do get paddle shifters, they only work when you're in the manual mode. Come on, give me the availability to drop a couple of cogs when I'm in drive. Pop the Camaro's long hood and there sits the base 3.6 litre V6 engine. You can actually see the ground around this lump. Using direct injection and variable valve timing on both the intake and exhaust sides delivers 304 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. Off the line, the engine's work ethic and the 6-speed Manumatic's low first gear brings a decent launch. The close spacing between second through fourth gears also means the mid-range is pretty strong. Now this is reflected in the 0 to 100k time of 6.7 seconds. This Camaro is all about form taking precedence over function. The form, it is undeniably stunning. The function, well, the sight lines to the back are pretty poor. The back seat, I won't go there, and the trunk, well, it's undersized. But when all's said and done, who gives a darn? If there is a disappointment with this tester, it was that the overall performance never managed to wow this driver in quite the same manner as the rest of the car. The exhaust note is also disappointingly thin. Yes, there's a raspy bark at times, but it's just not Camaro-esque. Those looking to have their world truly rocked will have to step up to the SS and its 6.2 litre V8 and 426 horsepower when it's teamed with a 6-speed manual box. The 0 to 100k time of around 5 seconds then makes it the real deal. This new Camaro was well worth the wait because it lives up to its advanced billing. It is quick, it handles like the Dickens, and it's got a style it can call its own. The bottom line, this new Camaro rocks.
Michelin, a better way forward.
We don't like to think about it, but Old Man Winter is on his way. And for drivers, it's time to think winter tires. In the province of Quebec, 4 winter tires are mandated. But in other provinces, the big question is, if I can only afford 2, where do they go, front or back? Well, there's only one answer, on the rear. Whether it's rear wheel, all wheel, or front wheel drive, you need the stability at the back. Now here's a vehicle going through the pylons with 4 winter tires. Traction is, as expected, superb. Now we put all seasons on the back and 2 winters on the front of this front wheel Passat, and the pictures tell the story. Absolutely no traction at the same speed and even slower speeds. So while 4 winter tires are ideal, if you gotta go with 2, make sure you put them at the rear for optimum stability and safety. Make sure you check out the Motoring website at motoringtv.com. You can watch any program you may have missed. In fact, how about a trip down memory lane and see what we were driving as far back as 1988. Check out our blog, our photo gallery, and much more. It's all there at motoringtv.com.
There's nothing more fun than driving a convertible. I mean, I love driving convertibles, and a hardtop convertible makes sense for the Canadian market because it's an all-weather car. You can drive it basically all year round if you choose to. And building a convertible on the G platform gives us a really solid foundation to make a car that's fun to drive.
I think it's an interesting entry in this category. It certainly completes the G series lineup. They've got the coupe, they've got the sedan, and now they've got a convertible. And as its volume leader, for the brand, it's a nice rounded lineup now.
This is what the market is going to in this segment, and that's a big roof to store someplace, and it's going in your trunk. And when it's there, you've got no trunk.
Oh, the trunk space, Brad, is really a problem. There's a little trough there. They rate it at 1.99 cubic feet when you have the roof stored. You can't even put an overnight bag in there, so the trunk space is basically going to be the back seat.
You may have noticed earlier it appeared we were driving the inside in a desert in the rain. Well, you're right, it was Arizona where, of course, it never rains. Well, now we find ourselves in beautiful, damp Newfoundland and in the gorgeous, stunning Gros Morne National Park. And it looks terrific even in the rain. And we're here to check out an Insight that began its journey on the West Coast, ended up here on the Rock, and set some pretty impressive fuel economy numbers in the process. We're going to have more on that later. But first, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardiner and see what Bill thinks of the possibility of working on a hybrid.
Hey Brad, I found it really interesting when you're at different international airports across the nation, the different vehicles that you see there and where you see hybrids and where you don't. For example, in Las Vegas, you go to the McCarran Airport, Ford pretty much owns that airport. Lincoln's, Crown Victorias, Ford E-Series vans, it's just almost entirely Ford vehicles there, and they're all rear-wheel drive. You get to Pearson Airport in Toronto, Lincoln, rear-wheel drive, Lincoln Town cars rule the roost there. You get out in Western Canada in the prairies, you'll see a mixture of old and new front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive vehicles, pretty much a dog's breakfast of every kind of vehicle you can imagine. You get to Vancouver, it's predominantly Toyota. Prius taxis everywhere. Corolla taxis all over the place. Toyota seems to own the Vancouver airport. So I guess it depends on the climate and the operating conditions that you're in. Different vehicles will perform better in different climates. But you know what? I still hope that the internal combustion engine prevails. That's what I would buy. Although I have to admit, hybrids have their place. If you're a commuter, if you're stuck in city traffic, predominantly your drive is mostly stop and go driving in the city, how do you beat a hybrid? Because the engine's shut off when the vehicle's not in motion. You're stuck in traffic, stopped at a light, stopped at a stop sign, that engine's shut off. The internal combustion engine idling is getting 0 miles per gallon. So the efficiency battle is easily won by the hybrid. But in a northern climate like most of Canada, do I want a car with a $6,000 or $8,000 battery? Because I tend to keep my cars forever and a day. No. And I'm thinking back to a story Graham Fletcher told me a few months ago about a friend of his who had a first generation Prius, went to trade the car in. The dealer looked at it and said, well, the battery's failed. We'll give you $500 for the car. And that was a pretty bitter pill to swallow on a car that wasn't really all that old. Still looked pretty viable, looked in good shape, drove well, but had no resale or trade-in value. So, you know what? My choice would be the conventional chassis, conventional powertrain, internal combustion engine. Just keep the size down, keep the weight down. Never mind this bigger is better stuff, because when we get into SUVs and pickups, we always tend to opt for the bigger engine, thinking, well, it's bigger, it's better, it won't work as hard and all this stuff. If you can do the job with a smaller engine, take for example this Honda Fit, 1.5 liter 4-cylinder engine with 10.4 to 1 compression ratio and a standard transmission. The thing drives great and gets phenomenal fuel mileage because it's aerodynamic, it's light, it's efficient, it just works well, and there's no trick technology. That'd be my choice. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 2009.
Gary Sowerby is a 4-time Guinness World Record holder for long-distance driving. His latest adventure was behind the wheel of the new Honda Insight.
We did a 35-day trip from sea to shining sea, started in Victoria, British Columbia, and ending in St. John's, Newfoundland, on an environmental trek across Canada. The main idea was to take this new Honda Insight and to drive it across the country, but to give some journalists a chance to drive it.
One of the major issues about this car is good fuel economy, and of course when we challenge journalists to do the very best job they can in terms of getting great fuel economy, they love that kind of thing, and we've had some tremendous results.
The cars ran great the whole time, and we've got to come up with some pretty good fuel economy numbers. We did a run from Parliament Hill to downtown Montreal and averaged 3.8 liters per 100, which works out to around 74 miles per gallon, pretty phenomenal, at normal road speeds. What do I find? I find it's fun to drive. I mean, this one here's got the paddle shift on it, so you can drive it in a complete econo mode, or you can. It's a bit sporty too, which sometimes I think people don't think in terms of hybrid and sportiness, but this thing has a bit of a sporty feel to it.
Closed captioning on Motoring 2009 is brought to you by the 2009 Chevrolet Traverse Crossover. It's everything you've ever wished for, and then some.
At this year's Shanghai Motor Show in China, the head honcho of Mazda said that Mazda simply can't afford to get into the hybrid business. The cost of developing these vehicles is simply too much. They don't have the money. And according to him, the fuel savings, they can almost achieve the same thing with improvements in conventional technology. Things like stop-start systems under idle, more diesel engines, direct injection, turbocharging, and the like. Then a couple of weeks later, he said, oh, no, we'll be doing hybrids by 2015. I wonder who got to him. Now, the Japanese companies, they're going to their governments for loans just like the domestics are. I wonder if maybe some politician started telling them, no, you better say that you're building hybrids because that's what we think you should do. Politicians telling car makers how to run their business. Where have we heard that before? The fact is, This guy must have watched motoring all his life, because we've basically been saying the same thing forever. Hybrids are very expensive to build. We have no idea what the profitability is because the companies that build them don't really want us to know. But the technology is extremely expensive. You end up driving around with a 600 or 700 pound battery in your car, whether you're using it or not, because even when you're running on the gasoline engine, you're still hauling all this weight around. As we've said many times, the payout can be anywhere from 12 to 25 years before you save enough fuel to pay for the extra cost of the car. And the issue that nobody really wants to talk about very much, what do you do with this 800 pound battery when it's dead after 8 or 10 years? It costs $5,000 or $6,000 to replace it. And in the current market, when you got a 4 or 5 year old Prius, if it needs a new battery, it's pretty much landfill. So hybrids, sorry, I'm not convinced. Direct injection, turbocharging diesel engines, improvements to fuel efficiency on conventional cars, trust me, within the next 50 years, the prime powertrain in most vehicles will still be the gasoline-powered internal combustion engine. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, that's it for this week. I know what you're saying. Boy, we've seen a lot of the Honda Insight on this show. Well, you're right. But next week, we're going to check out its main competition, and that's a Toyota Prius. What do I think of the Insight? Well, I think it's a big improvement over its predecessor. It's a Honda. It's solid. Now, the question is, would I buy a hybrid today? Well, as I said earlier, today's small cars are stylish, they're fuel efficient, and they're clean. So the answer is no. But you've got to hand it to companies like Honda and Toyota. They're continuing the research, they're continuing to improve the technology, and that can only bode well for all of us in the future. And speaking of the future, Graham will really look at the nuts and bolts of this Insight on a future test drive. In fact, if you go to motoringtv.com, you can see his test drive and our driving impressions on the original Insight 10 years ago. How about that? That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
I like that it's futuristic without being sort of for futuristic sake, whereas I think the first generation in particular was just kind of weird without a purpose for being weird. This one seems a lot more livable. It's smooth, it's comfortable, it has a lot going for it, and the little extras like the solar ventilation are interesting little features. I'm not sure if they would matter to you after the first week, but certainly everybody enjoys trying them. Everybody likes a new toy.
Motoring 2009 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q Horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.